You know that feeling, when you're on a United A319, doing nothing more than a 2-hour domestic flight, and you just have to be taxiing past a Swiss 777, and you're thinking, oh, how I wish to be on that plane instead. Oh wait, that's my connecting flight. No, not the MAX, the Swiss 777. You know, the flagship. All these years of waiting have come down to this trip. Today, I'm finally taking the flagship aircraft of Swiss International Airlines on flight LX39 from San Francisco to Zurich. I have about 3 hours here in San Francisco. I was kinda surprised to see that my ride to Zurich for today was already here when I landed, but it turns out that the turnaround between LX38, the number operating the opposite route, and LX39 takes a long time. San Francisco is one of 3 airports in California I've been to. The other 2 are LAX and Burbank. I have yet to cover a flight out of LAX, but Burbank actually made 2 appearances on this channel, both times in my Avello reviews. I arrived at gate F14. It isn't as far from the international terminal as many of the other United gates, so I got pretty lucky. The walk to the international terminal was quick, but my plane is positioned at gate G13 and 14, which is at the end of the North International Terminal. The departures board in this area didn't even give me the gate number. All it said was that my flight was at the international terminal. But because I could see my plane from here, I knew exactly where to go, even though this airport was completely unfamiliar to me. I didn't even need to read a single sign to find my gate. As we are in here, walking to the G concourse and watching the tons and tons of United 777s that will pass on the way, I think I gotta talk about Swiss Airlines and why this airline is so special to me. Let's take a trip down memory lane. There I was, K4E child, in Chicago O'Hare Airport on the evening of June 29, 2013. I boarded the Swiss flight LX9 to Zurich. It was an overnight transatlantic flight, and oh boy. I don't know what it was about that flight. The sudden waking up in a completely different place. The plane aesthetics. This was the Swiss A330-300, by the way. I don't know what it was, but I got off that A330 in absolute awe and wonder. This wasn't my first transatlantic flight, but it was my earliest memory of one. Right after that, I first had to learn what an A330 was, and I did. And in doing so, I found out about Swiss's entire fleet. Then over the years, I would fly on different airlines, learn about their fleets, where they fly. I would always look forward to my next day of flying, and now, here I am, a flyer on YouTube. Aviation became a lifelong passion for me. All because of some Swiss A330 flying LX9. Well, okay, let's be real. Had that been any other transatlantic flight that day, the same probably would have happened to me. But in a way, that flight started everything for me. It surely sparked my love for aviation, and words can't describe how much I wish I knew the tail number of the plane that did LX9 on June 29th of 2013. But sadly, that was long before I even knew what a tail number was. But I did take Swiss LX9 again in 2018 on the A330 and did catch the tail. That flight turned out to be the second newest A330 in the Swiss fleet, and I loved that flight too. I even have a Skymarks model of the exact aircraft at home, and though 2018 was before I started making trip reports, the jet did make a small appearance in my Austrian Airlines video, which you should also check out. So yeah, I wanted to tell those stories because Swiss Airlines is the airline that started my entire passion for aviation and travel. Huge shout out to them. Not that they're gonna be exempt from a fair, unbiased review, but still, thank you, Swiss. San Francisco's G-gates mostly consist of United Boeing 777s going all over the world, both of the 200 and 300 variants. Some are in the classic Continental livery, others are in the new Evo Blue one. I also have a lot of memories on the United 777, so it was cool seeing so many of them. As we've seen the tail of today's plane a few times already, you've probably noticed that it's positioned at the end of the concourse. Because of this, I originally thought that we got the worst gate in the G concourse, as oftentimes jetways at ends are positioned at weird angles that, if you know what I mean, they only allow you to see maybe the front center of the fuselage or just barely the tail, but in a few minutes I'd be proven wrong. Welcome to the G-Gates, otherwise known as the International Concourse for the Star Alliance carriers, and I would have spent a lot of time inside of here if I never came across what I'm about to come across. One thing I should tell you is that I've had my eye on this flight for 5 to 6 years.
Yes, of course, it takes a long walk through a long hallway to finally reach the gate of the flight I've been waiting to take for like 5 or 6 years. Oh, the suspense is huge. And finally.
And there she is. What a beauty. Hotel Bravo, Juliet November Alpha, an 8-year-old Boeing 777-300ER. But this isn't just any Swiss 777. This is the first 777 to ever be delivered to Swiss International Airlines. In 2016, Swiss took delivery of its first 777, which, yes, happens to be the one I'm taking today, the one right here. They hyped up this new aircraft a lot, crowning it their flagship and revealing its modernized product. Ever since that day, I've hoped that one day I'd get a chance to fly on board the Swiss flagship 777. 8 years later, here I am about to step on board the Swiss flagship. I've had my eye on this flight for about 5 to 6 years, as during this time, the San Francisco to Zurich route appeared a few times as an option for me to take to Europe. Well, this one and the one from LA, numbered LX41, both that one and today's flight operate the 777. I actually was in LAX last year flying Southwest and was unfortunate enough to taxi past LX41, and unlike now, I couldn't look at it and say, that's my connecting flight, but now I can, and I'm overjoyed. Finally, here I stand on San Francisco's terrace, soon to board the flight I've had my eye on for years. And I stand corrected. What I thought was the worst gate in the concourse turned out to be the best one, but to be fair, I had absolutely no idea that San Francisco's outdoor terrace just happened to be right over my gate. Actually, I didn't even know they had a terrace at all until now. It was a complete surprise to me. San Francisco's Concourse G is composed of 2 floors. The hallway with all the shops and dining options is on the 2nd floor, while the gate areas are on the 1st. As you can see here, the view of my plane is terrible from the actual gate area, so had there not been a 2nd floor or a terrace, this would have been the worst gate at the airport, for sure. While I was here, I took a quick look at the chocolate shop. Truly a chocolate experience Glasgow could only wish to have. Don't worry, there was nothing AI generated here. I picked up some food at a Vietnamese restaurant called Asian Box, not far from G13. I then took it out to the terrace to watch the action on the taxiway. This is the first time I don't feel awkward filming videos at an airport because everyone around me is doing it. So far, excluding my plane and this Air New Zealand 777 headed for Auckland, every aircraft in this concourse has been United Airlines. That was until the Scandinavian Airlines A330 came in. It was the first wide-body I saw today that wasn't a 777. Also, there was a strange visitor in this concourse, an Airbus A320 operating a domestic flight to Eugene, Oregon? That was surprising, as this is an international concourse. We have flights all over here going to faraway places like New Zealand, Switzerland, Germany, Japan, and then there's Eugene. That was the only domestic flight at this concourse at this time. Don't know why it was here, maybe there was a shortage of domestic gates. Another breaker of the 777 streak, we have a United 787 Dreamliner that came in from somewhere, and then there was a Singapore Airlines A350 ULR, stands for Ultra Long Range. Obviously this plane is doing the Singapore to San Francisco route, but I believe this one also sometimes does the New York to Singapore route, which is the longest flight in the world. I think this is my first time seeing a Singapore Airlines A350. It's definitely been a while since I've seen any Singapore Airlines plane, so it was nice seeing this. I made one last visit to the terrace when it got dark outside. This place is gorgeous, and if you happen to be flying out of San Fran's G-gates, I'd totally recommend paying a visit. I also wanted to mention another cool thing about this particular 777. It once had a special livery. A while ago, it was painted in the faces of Swiss livery. It was a pretty cool livery. It had the faces of, I believe, over 2,000 of their employees. Sadly, as you can see here, the jet is no longer in this livery. But if I happen to come across a model available on sale of the aircraft in this livery, I'll probably get it. Before I went back inside for boarding, I caught a glimpse of the Lufthansa A350 headed for Munich. I would fly on one of these about 2 weeks later, not this particular A350, but it will be the subject of an upcoming trip report. One thing I found particularly unusual for this flight being a 777 was that the only jetway connected to the plane was at the front left door. Most of the times in the past when I've boarded wide-body aircraft like these, they'd connect the jetway to the second door, and only have a jetway connected to the front if there was a second one available. But this was a bit of a different occurrence. Welcome on board the first 333 to be delivered to Swiss International Airlines. The seats are much more up-to-date than those on the A330, but I'm happy they kept the brown colors. I think they fit Swiss perfectly. This interior also has more updated screens, much better than the old ones present on the A330. I've always wondered about whether or not Swiss plans on retrofitting the 330s with their new product. They already did that with their A340s, so I wouldn't be too surprised if they did that sometime in the future. Also, the 333s have colored mood lighting, which we'll be seeing in use a lot during this 10-hour transcon transatlantic flight. At every seat there is a pillow, as there should be. Okay, I feel so stupid right now as I'm editing, but it turns out that I forgot to film a video of the blanket. I don't know how I did that. I could have sworn I got a video of it, but I can't find it at all. All I can offer you is this freeze frame from discarded footage that kind of shows it. It's decent quality, not as good as the ones offered on Lufthansa, but still better than many others. I did have the footage I took of the earbuds that the cabin crew handed out. They work just fine and I had no problem with them. Also, take notes, United. Let's see if you can take my advice when I fly your MAX. I'm in seat 49G, by the way, which is in the middle, not at a window. My apologies for that, but please don't worry. Of all the flights I took on this trip, this was the only one where I wasn't seated at a window, so my next trip reports will have wing views. But regardless, I'm so glad to be back on Swiss and to finally be making a trip report on it. It's more than ironic that I somehow managed to catch a flight on their sister carrier first, but that one turned out to be my most viewed trip report, so I'm glad I did.
Your seatbelt now, as we are taking off. Swiss Premium Economy passengers must close the shoulder belt for taxi, takeoff and landing. However, passengers smaller than 1 meter 30 or 4'3" shall not use the shoulder belt to avoid injury. Because turbulence can occur unexpectedly, you are obliged to have your seatbelt fastened whenever you are seated. If cabin pressure is lost, oxygen masks will be released automatically. Pull the mask towards your face and cover your nose and mouth. Then help children and other passengers.
The legroom is okay, but according to Seat Guru, the pitch is 32 inches, which I find hard to believe. I've definitely seen better than this. Also, Swiss decided to put their economy configuration in a 3-4-3. As much as I hate that on the 777, it's nothing less than expected as every airline does it, except maybe one or two. This is inevitably going to make the seats feel very narrow. Still, they were a lot more comfortable than the ones on the American 777, but that's a low bar. Before we leave for Switzerland, we gotta check out the in-flight entertainment. The screen is adjustable, it's got a headphone jack and a charging port, and it works perfectly. Still not quite as fast as the ones on United and Delta though. There is an extensive selection of content. Not as good as most US carriers, but still better than what British Airways had on the A380. Because this is an overnight, I won't be needing it much, but then again, it is a 10-hour flight, so it's probably good to have all this. Speaking of this being a 10-hour flight, this is going to be the longest flight reviewed on my channel as of today. Probably the longest one I've taken ever. It probably won't be like that for long though, because let's just say I'm set to do an even bigger trip this summer. Also, ironically enough, the flight I'm taking after this will be the shortest flight on this channel, so yeah, I'm quite literally taking my longest and shortest flights back to back. Now here we are, taking off for Switzerland once again. I just realized that I forgot to show you guys the flight map, but here it is. It looks amazing in my opinion. It's got many different views, and then it's also got all the flight info that you need. Really cool. The seats on the Swiss 777 have a built-in cup holder on the tray table. I find this very helpful as sometimes I just need to drink water without restricting my space with a tray table. I think this is an underrated feature that more airlines should use. The last time I saw this, I believe, was on the Lufthansa A330 2 years ago, on the second leg on my way back from Madrid. Then we have the actual tray table, and as a bonus, we don't have one, but 2 cup groves. The only problem I found was that the tray table is so small, especially for a wide body. This is just unacceptable for a long-haul flight. In the literature pocket, we have the 777 safety card, along with a Swiss Airlines branded air sickness bag. Okay, so Swiss Airlines has an airline magazine, but it's online now, and you have to scan a QR code on this card. That is just sad. But they do have hard copies of their shopping magazine. Obviously, what caught my eye there on the cover was the picture of the model Swiss 777, so let's find it. Okay, I found that little stinker. I decided not to get it on this flight, because I didn't feel like spending money on board today. Also, if I was to get a Swiss 777 model, I would prefer it to be the tail number of the exact aircraft I'm on, and I wasn't sure if this one was, and I know that there are others that exist that are the tail Juliet November Alpha, so if I'm gonna get a Swiss 777 model, I'd want one of those. Cabin crew soon came around with the first round of complimentary service, which was this water bottle. Soon after the dinner service began, they had 2 meal options. One was pasta, the other, if I remember correctly, was some sort of chicken dish. I went for the pasta because, in my opinion, it's hard to go wrong with that. Yeah, here it is. For my drink, I chose apple juice, then there was the main course, the tomato pasta. We had a tasty looking dessert, a bread roll with cheese and butter, salad, which also included dressing, and finally there was the metal cutlery, which is fantastic and seems to be consistently a thing on Lufthansa Group carriers, which includes Swiss. Overall, a tasty meal. The main course did exceed my expectations. It was really good. This meal was certainly a step up over what I had on both Lufthansa and Edelweiss in 2022, so yeah, good job Swiss. Right after the trays were collected, the cabin crew came around again, offering 2 more drinks. I went for a water and another apple juice. This is just wonderful service so far. Slowly but surely, the cabin lights began to dim, starting with this sky blue color with some red in the mix, and eventually darkening to a dark indigo. So at this time, I reclined my seat and inflated my travel pillow so I could get some sleep as we make our long journey across the continent and over the Atlantic. Good night. A very good morning to you all from the skies above Ireland's west coast. This was one of the best sleeps I've had on a transatlantic flight, though that's probably because there was so much time for that. At this time, the cabin crew were coming around with breakfast, so I waited for that. Earlier during the flight, the cabin crew came around the cabin offering coloring books, crayons, and other stuff like that to the children who were on board. But they also had a lot of these adorable Swiss plane plushes, and I also asked for one of these. Back when I was a kid and I flew on my first Swiss flight, the flight that started my love for aviation, I got one of these things, as well as when I was on my second transatlantic flight with Swiss, and I still have both of them today. This being my third transatlantic flight with the airline, I have to get myself a third one. I still remember when I was on that flight and I got my first one of these. So yeah, I am very happy they're still handing them out. Also, if there are any parents watching this who want to take a family trip tour from Europe, I would definitely recommend taking Swiss. Once the cabin crew got to serve me breakfast, I chose water for my drink. Unfortunately, they don't have metal cutlery with their breakfast meal. We do get some breakfast foods in here. We get both a bread roll and a croissant, which is good. Then we get some orange juice, butter and jam, and also some Chobani yogurt. Then we get a piece of Wisconsin white cheddar. I guess it's not Swiss cheese, but it was good. And finally, we got cream cheese. This was a fairly good breakfast. I liked it a lot. Not sure if I like this one or the one on Edelweiss more. I like them for different reasons. And the final round of service consisted of the iconic Swiss chocolate. Everyone loves the Swiss chocolate, and that includes me. They'll serve this on pretty much all of their flights.
Bildschirm zurück. Die Safety-Instructions-Karte befindet sich in der Sitztasche. Lesen Sie diese vor der Landung.
I actually had the option to go through Chicago and take flight LX9 instead of this one for a similar price and layovers. It would have been cool to actually review the flight that sparked my aviation interest, but I figured I'd waited too long to take the Swiss flagship, and at this time Flight 9 is using the A330. It uses the 777 during summer, but that's not right now. Bucket list item achieved. I have flown on the Swiss flagship. This was a fantastic flight, brought back so many memories for one. The service was wonderful, and we had great crew, a good in-flight entertainment system with fast screens. Yeah, it was overall a memorable flight that I'd take again anytime. The only real criticism I got is the seats being narrow. It's inevitable for a 343 configuration in a 777, but then again, Swiss chose to put a 343 configuration in their 777. Had this been a 333, oh boy, this flight would have been so much better. But still, it was really good. Final score for Swiss is 8.6 out of 10. Swiss isn't just a special airline to me, it is also a really nice one in my opinion, and I'd recommend their long haul to anyone. It was more empty in Zurich Airport's E-gates than what I usually saw in the past when I arrived here. This aircraft was inactive for the entire day, the day before it left for San Francisco to pick me up. After I got off, it stayed here for the entirety of tomorrow before beginning its long journey back to San Francisco to repeat the same routine it did today. For some strange reason, my plane and this other 333 that was next to it were the only two 333s here at this time, which I found odd, but I think it's because most of the long-haul flights out of Zurich have already left. So yeah, long video today. If you've made it this far, please make sure to leave a like and to subscribe. I have a lot more trip reports coming up. One of them will be my connecting flight out of Zurich, which I'll be heading to now. I don't think it will be my next review. This is one of those few times where I have a backlog of videos, but I'm not sure what order I want to upload them in. The only thing I've been sure about is that I wanted to upload this one first, but from here I haven't planned it out. My next video probably won't be my connecting flight out of here. That one I'll probably upload a bit later, but I'll see what I decide. I think this is a good spot to end the video. Thank you for watching this very special trip report. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice day.